I just watched a viral video from a student at Oxford talking about how it's not fair that some people are born taller, some people are born stronger, other people are born shorter, other people are born weaker. And because of that, you don't have equality. Because no matter how much some people are going to try, they're never going to be at the same level as a person that's strong. And it's not fair because it's due to nature, so we should organize society in order to be more equitable. And that's what equity is. It's applying this concept to groups of people based on identity politics. Some groups are more successful, some groups are not. So we need to take away from the groups that have more and give it to the groups that have less. This is a Marxist ideology. And I found this article in a newspaper where an economics professor completely explains why this idea can't possibly work. So apparently, the teacher failed an entire class. An economics professor at a local college made a statement that she had never failed a single student before, but had recently failed an entire class. That class had insisted that socialism worked and that no one would be poor and no one would be rich in a great equalizer. So the professor then said, okay, we will have an experiment. In this class, on this plan, all grades will be averaged, which means that no one will probably fail and no one will probably receive an A either. But everyone is going to receive an average grade. After the first test, the grades were averaged and everyone got a B. The students who studied hard were upset, and the students who studied little were happy. Now the second test came along, and the students who studied little had studied even less, and the ones who studied hard decided they wanted a free ride too, so they studied little. The second test average was a D. No one was happy. When the third test rolled in, the average was an F. As the test proceeded, the scores never increased as bickering, blame, and name-calling all resulted in hard feelings and no one would study for the benefit of anyone else. Because of this, all have failed. And the professor told them that socialism would also ultimately fail because when the reward is great, the effort to succeed is great. But when the government takes all the reward away, no one will try or want to succeed. These are possibly the best 5 sentences you'll ever read, and all are applicable to this experiment. Number 1, you cannot legislate the poor into prosperity by legislating the wealthy out of prosperity. Number 2, what one person receives without work for another person must work for without receiving. Number 3, the government cannot give to anybody anything that the government does not first take from someone else. Number 4, you cannot multiply wealth by dividing it. And finally, number 5, when half of the people get the idea that they do not have to work because the other half is going to take care of them, and when the other half gets the idea that it does no good to work because somebody else is going to get what they work for, that is the beginning of the end of any nation. So there's a lot of truth to say here, and I know personally a couple of examples from real life where this has occurred. Like, for example, I had a friend from Sweden, and she was getting welfare because she had unemployment. And I asked her, like, why don't you get a job? And she said, like, well, I could get a job, but then I would actually have less money. Because if I work for minimum wage, I lose my benefits, I lose my welfare, and because of that, she didn't see it as a reward. And this is also true for teenagers who get money from their parents. I knew a lot of teenagers, especially at high school, who didn't want to get a job because they would get money from their parents. And they even looked down at other people who did get a job. So, for example, when I got a job at a car wash, I actually had other colleagues of mine laughing at me. Why? Because they were getting money from their parents. Meanwhile, I was trying to work for a living and I was trying to make some money, even though, well, working at a car wash wasn't very prestigious. But still, as a teenager, I enjoyed doing it because finally I was able to become a little bit more independent and be able to get my own money. So it is part of human nature to be competitive, but you want to see the reward for being competitive. Working for minimum wage doesn't really make sense when you can get money away from the government. The problem is, it's not the government giving you that money, it's taking it away from other people, and then it's giving it to you. So that is what's actually happening. Another example that I can think of, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows about this, is when you're at university or when you're at high school and the teacher gives you a group project. So the group project usually ends up you pairing with other people that work differently. Maybe some people are smarter and they want to get involved in the project more. Maybe other people don't want to take the project seriously, or other people don't even care. And what ends up happening is that the sole responsibility of the project usually falls on a minority of people that actually want to work hard and get a good grade for the project. So when the teacher actually grades everyone for that project, they will get the same grade. So from my personal experience, usually the people that work hard end up sieving at the people who went out clubbing and didn't care about the project. Even though they got a good grade and they should be happy, they're actually upset, and sometimes it can even ruin friendships just because they had to work so much in order to get that grade, and they view that their work could have been a little bit less intensive if other people helped out. Now, imagine if the same group of people would have been issued another project and another project and another project. By the end of the day, probably the people that worked a lot in order to get a good grade, they would start working a little bit less because they would just be annoyed. And this experiment, by the way, has even been done on animals. Like, it's some lizard brain shit where even dogs understand the concept of unfairness. So this experiment has been done plenty of times with different species, but the one that I noticed was the one with the dogs. So you have two dogs and you teach them a trick. Every time they shake your hand, you give them a treat. So after the dog learns the trick, you take two dogs that know the same trick, and with one of them, every time it shakes your hand, you give it a treat, but with the other, you don't give it a treat. So what ends up happening is that if you repeat this and the other dog gets to see it, eventually the other dog refuses to shake your hand because it views it unfair that the other dog gets a treat for doing it and he doesn't. And it's literally the same applied at a societal scale. And it doesn't just cause people to work less, as we saw in this experiment. It also causes people to be seething. It makes them hate and be angry towards the people that aren't working. It makes them infuriated that why is it that they get to work so much while other people don't? How is that fair? And exactly like you saw in this experiment, it ends up with name calling, it ends up with people blaming each other, it ends up with all of these problems that can be solved if instead of blaming each other, they blame the teacher. The system is unfair. It's not the other colleagues that aren't working because, yeah, as we listen to the Oxford professor, some people are born short, some people are born able-bodied. It's not their fault. They shouldn't be blamed. In fact, it would be horrible to blame them for that. But the people that should be blamed are the ones that are creating the system, because just like it's not their fault that they are born that way, it's also not your fault that you're working hard and your money is being taken away by force. And here you have a lot of social justice activists that blame you for not being a real Christian for thinking like this. And I read the Bible, and I didn't notice when Jesus said that the Roman Empire should take away people's money as taxes and then redistribute them. No, in the Bible it says that you should donate to charity, that you should care about your family. So the people that are not capable of doing hard work, then their family should take care of them, and various charities. It shouldn't be done by force. You shouldn't take money away from the people that work hard and then give it to others, because you're just going to ruin society that way, like this economics professor has pointed out. And it's kind of unfortunate that this is an old newspaper and people don't think like this in modern time. In fact, if people thought like this in modern time, they would probably get canceled. You're not even allowed to express this idea. It's being viewed as mean or evil. So yeah, let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you in the comment section. Take care.